Hello and welcome to CJB Games, Cameron here, and today we have another devlog for the game I'm solo making called Groundskeeping, a first-person multiplayer hotel maintenance horror game. Continuing from last episode, we are going to try and finish the white box for the new map we just started. After getting the shed finished, we can move on to the basement of our building. With this map being a lot smaller than my last one, there has to be ample space for the monster to move around without seeing the players immediately, so the underground portions of this map will be a lot bigger than the previous map. It's always much harder designing a lower floor if portions of the building are already built on top of it. The higher floors tend to block out the light, so you have to continuously place point lights unless you want to work in the dark. So with much greater attention to detail, the basement is finally looking complete and we can move on to the upstairs. In stark contrast to the basement, upstairs is always a lot easier to create. I already have a floor plan to work with, so I can just have fun adding more rooms. I made sure to continue adding text actors and point lights as I went along so I can remember what I intended each room to be. With all the rooms laid out for upstairs, I can now begin to add the roof to the building. It was important to me that I added the extra detail of the roof's shape when whiteboxing, as this will make it a lot easier to build the actual model when it comes to it. For now, I also turned shadows off on the point lights, so their luminosity could reach further and I wouldn't have to place as many. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, this map is a lot smaller than the previous one, so the enemy needs a way to navigate the map without being seen a lot of the time. In the Red Pig Inn, there was going to be a large section of forest here and there, so the enemy would hopefully get to different areas by sneaking through the thicket. We don't have that luxury in this one, so I've decided to add crawl spaces within the house that only the enemy can utilise. Think of these as secret passages behind walls and tight spaces where usually only piping would be found. If these work as intended, it will hopefully give the players a sense of unease, as the enemy could be anywhere around them at any given moment, creaking through the plastered walls. The passages themselves don't have to look believable in the floor plan, as the player will never see inside them, only their entrances and exits. With this in mind, I can take a few liberties and have passages that go from the lowest point of the house all the way to the top. Now that they're all in place, I'm confident I have the space to design that slow build in horror that I want to achieve in this project. So that's all done and we can move on to the final rooms of this level and finally be finished with whiteboxing yet again. Even though it's taken a while to do, I've really enjoyed it as it's an exercise in letting my imagination run wild, with the added bonus of this layout being incredibly useful from a game dev perspective. So now let's move on to another issue I found with last sprint's playthrough, the sound of the dripping blood in the intro. The audio I had sourced for it just wasn't believable enough for me, so I wanted to find something better. That wasn't too hard to achieve, and luckily bringing it into the engine was a simple asset swap. I do think it sounds a lot better now, and whilst it wasn't a huge issue to begin with, it was bugging me nonetheless. Finally, we can move on to the final task for this episode, which was the bug of the player being able to stand up from crouching when they shouldn't be able to. The way I went about fixing this was getting a line trace to spawn above the player's head whenever they began to crouch. Then, when they attempted to stand up, the line trace would check to see if nothing was within half a metre of it. If there was something hitting the line trace above the player, then they wouldn't be able to stand up, but if nothing was there, nothing would be triggered and the player could stand up as normal. This was a little tricky to implement on the blueprint side of things, but after some time I've got it working well. It hasn't been implemented for the player lying down as of yet, but I plan to get this fixed at a later date. Well, with that all done, I did my routine of playing the game a couple of times, looking for bugs or things I could quickly fix, and luckily things seem to be playing very smoothly. So that about does it for this part of my devlog. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Now that the preliminary tasks are finished, it's full steam ahead on this new environment. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and keep up to date with the continuation of this game. If you want to support me further, you can get my last game on Steam now called Escape from Violet Institute. See you all and have a good day.